This is ring announcer Thomas Triber. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the time has arrived for Inside Boxing Weekly. So here are your hosts, Mike Goodpaster, John Einrein hofer, and Jeremiah Preisser on the Grueling Truth Sports Network.
All right, guys, welcome to Inside Boxing Weekly on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Inside Boxing Weekly is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation and the Sheridan Report. Make sure you check out the Sheridan Report at Sheridan Report on Twitter or the SheridanReport.com on the internet. And you can find out more information about the Retired Boxers Foundation by going on Facebook and just looking it up. I am your co-host for Inside Boxing Weekly, Mike Goodpaster, and right now I would like to welcome in my co-host, number one, Jeremiah Preisser. How you doing, Jeremiah?
I'm doing really damn well. I get to talk boxing with you fellas, so let's get it going.
All right, and our other co-host, of course, as always, John Einrein hofer. How you doing, John?
Good to be here, Mike. Need to vent about some bad boxing, so
yeah, this was a bad weekend, I think. I don't even know where to start.
I agree.
Bad. We'll start off with Humberto Soto upsets Brandon Rios. I didn't know it was an upset. I thought it was two guys that had nothing left trying to make a little bit more money. I don't think
emphasis on the little there, Mike.
Make a little bit of money. And the other thing that pissed me off, I don't know this because I didn't watch it because I'm only watching this if it's 2012. But I hear they didn't even show the entire undercard on DAZN, John.
Yeah, and I didn't hear the outrage from when PBC, who's like them or not, they're trying to get boxing exposed to more people, which to me that is something you can't argue is a good thing. And PBC had their undercard last night on the Fox Sports app and FS2, and DAZN somehow missed some undercard fight, but there wasn't a peep out of some people. And the week before, when there was 122
Hey, wait a second, though.
Fight,
do you think maybe there was not
outrage?
Maybe there wasn't a peep from anybody because nobody was watching to know.
I thought that was possible too, because when we talk about exposure to boxing to more people, and this is of course anecdotal, but you look at like Twitter, yeah, there's some boxing writers and a couple of people talking about some of these fights, but when you think of the whole universe of planet Earth, and that's who's talking about it, there doesn't seem to be anybody else. It's not real good.
All right. Other than that, did you get a chance to watch the fight or not?
I just saw parts of Soto and Rios. I didn't see the whole thing, and you might have had some action, but this wasn't a fight where Rios can't punch for the most part. Once he moved up to welterweight, he was a good puncher at lightweight, and Soto's coming from much lower weights. Even though they're fighting each other, but still, it looked like two guys that got up off out of a bar stool and we're going at it. And I'm all for an action fight. I'm not one of those people that are down on action fights, so don't put me in that class. But this was just two guys. Soto's 38. Rios is in his 30s. Rios is done. Not that Soto isn't, but this was really pointless. So. I think you really couldn't put much stock in it, even as some kind of an entertaining action fight, especially because both guys aren't particularly punchers fighting at the weight they're at.
All right, Jeremiah, do you have any take on this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got a little bit to say just because I've always been a fan of Humberto Soto. I mean, I'm glad he was able to pull off the minor upset. The guy's always had some guile, he's always had some craft. He's got a pretty solid boxing brain. He's been hard to get rid of. His work rate's always been good. And, if this would have been in 2012, this would have been real to see. But I was happy for Soto. I mean, Rios, to me, you probably need to stick a fork in him as soon as Bradley, banged him to the body like a drum and got him out of there. But no, I was happy to see Soto get the victory, and like John said, this doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things. But Soto looks like a middle-aged plumber, but the dude can fight. So
you know what? Maybe they'll create a belt for that, like the WBC Intercontinental Regional Plumber Welterweight Champion of the World.
or you could have the WBC Copper Pipe belt.
Ooh, the copper pipe.
Hey, I like that one. Well, hopefully the WBC is listening because they might take you up on that offer.
And then you could always have a secondary title with just like a faucet.
Well, don't worry. I'm sure Soto will be in some sort of an eliminator for some sort of WBC.
Well, I'm sure he will. He'll probably fight Andre Berto to see who gets to fight for the title.
It'll be called an eliminator. We don't know what it's eliminating or eliminating to, but it'll be an eliminator.
Yeah, they need to
credit card debt for him.
Well, hopefully it eliminates them from contention altogether, no matter who wins.
From watching this, nobody is ever eliminated until they're dead, even if they're 90. I think the IBO had Muhammad Ali ranked in the top 10 as late as 2010.
Well, Permaid Stu Verne was in an eliminator this weekend,
was it?
You're always got a chance to be in an eliminator.
All right. Next up, anybody want to talk about Jamal James? Because I think this is what we thought it was going into it. Anybody got any comments?
I just do want to make James was. Let me think of all the fights. Yeah, he was pretty much my only real positive comment of the weekend, just because. It's ironic that his only loss is to Ugas, because he's kind of putting on a run that's unfortunately about as good as you get nowadays, where he's not beating real very top guys or even guys that are really necessarily in what you would consider a legit top 10. But he's been on a run of beating decent guys, and he's doing a rarity that you don't see often, where he is punching better. His punching power has improved. He's got the height. As the way things are nowadays, he's earned at least a fight of some significance. So just want to give him some props for at least keeping that run going.
All right. Jeremiah, any comments, or can we move on, please?
I don't know why you sound so enthusiastic talking about Jamal James, but I did have a question for John. I think John's pretty much spot on in his assessment, and I like what I see from James so far. He's sitting down on his shots a bit better. He's got pretty quick hands. It was a little odd how Ray Mancini was so adamant about, the knockdown, for the
I think we just lost Jeremiah.
If he thought that James is now worthy...
Your phone's breaking up.
Okay, yeah. So I was just going to ask, John thinks that Jamal James is worthy of a squeak into the top 10 there.
Yeah, I think that's what's good. I mean, that is a real achievement, and I think welterweight, one of the best divisions, but James is probably like in a transnational or a ring top 10, he's a legitimate, probably around 9-10 type of a guy, which, that's something of some note. And I think he's put himself on that level. So, he has earned that. And, you'd like to see him at least get one significant fight, since he has worked his way up. But I think he is a top 10 guy at this point at the bottom part.
All right, next up, Anthony Durrell won a technical decision in 10 against Averill Yildirim. I know everybody on the internet's blowing up at how good this was, but I don't see it, Jeremiah.
I found it entertaining. I mean, I think if you
John,
look at...
what did you think?
I didn't think it was quite as good as everybody else. I think what I was looking at was...
It was better than everything else we saw on the weekend, though.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't hard or anything. It wasn't, like real boring. I think probably what detracted a little bit about it for me, and I'm reading into it, but I think I'm reading into it correctly. I think we'll probably see a fight after the next fight after this is, I was kind of looking at it to see what Anthony Durrell had left. And even though I do think he was winning the fight at the time it was stopped close enough, but I think he was winning. But he did look to me like he's about done. He was the better punching of the two Durrell brothers. He was the one that brought some power and scored some decent knockouts, like his first round knockout of Truax in his career. It just looked to me like he wasn't punching with the same authority against Yildirim. Yildirim did come with a bit better of an effort than I expected. I'm going to have to give him that, but I wouldn't rave about his performance like maybe some people were. I just think Anthony Durrell's he's 34. I think to me he's probably hit the end of the line is my gut feeling. So
how can he hit the line when he's the vacant WBC super middleweight champion, John?
And that's what's crazy about this stuff. And I think we need to get into that tonight. That's why people that don't get it, I think, need to get it. There's we know there's too many title belts and divisions. I mean, some people seem to have trouble getting that even, but there are others that get that. But you've got to get that there's too many weight classes as well, that the weight classes weren't added for safety or any kind of altruistic reason. They were just added for the alphabets to make money. They're not needed. And you're seeing in these kind of fights where they're putting a title belt on it and it's in one of these divisions we don't need, or it's just because we've got 17 divisions and we only need 8 or 9. And these fights are not really between fighters that really should be on the level that we're thinking they're at. It doesn't mean that they're terrible fighters, but these are guys that would not be in a top 10 if there were 8 or 9 divisions. And that's what we keep getting thrown at us. And I'm finding that getting kind of frustrating because you can see the quality's not there a lot of times.
All right. Now, Jeremiah, you want
to now I can
let that be a lesson to you. All right. John already knows about this. He knows how it works. You haven't figured it out yet, but go ahead.
No, man, I had fun watching the fight just because I think Durrell could have made, even at his age, I think he could have made things a bit easier on himself by moving. But, he chose to stand there and fight. And, I don't think Yildirim's a huge puncher, but I thought he was playing with fire a little bit there, just, letting himself be backed up to the ropes and get banged on a little bit. And Yildirim, even though he's basic, he's pretty bulldogged in his approach. And, he's banging the body all right. And I thought he had a pretty nice jab to the body. But as John said, I do think Durrell was winning. I think he was pretty sharp with his counter punches. And, he was putting some mustard on a number of it's funny that Chris Eubank Jr. went out there and then Durrell had to struggle with him the entire time. And I ended up looking at that cut after the fight because initially, it didn't look that bad, but I guess the doctor clearly saw something that I didn't see up close. I saw them open that baby up afterwards when he was on the table and they were squirting something inside of it. And that thing was pretty deep and pretty wide, but the whole title situation is just stupid. It's not even worth the time. Now they're talking about him unifying against Caleb Plant or David Benavidez. And of course, naturally, it would be one of those guys because they're all PBC fighters.
Yeah.
And the fact is, Durrell
to do that probably.
Yeah. And the fact is, Durrell, I have to say that he was widely viewed as the lesser of the two brothers. Andre, unification nonsense. I think David Benavidez beats him. I think Caleb Plant beats him. Durrell's just not going to have that thing for very long.
All right, let's move on to the O2 Arena, where a bunch of British fans spent a lot of money on a lot of tickets. And it just wasn't that good. I'm sorry, but the dumbest thing I've heard in the last year by a boxing announcer, and there's a lot of them to hear, Joe Joyce resembles George Foreman, Jeremiah.
Well, he certainly doesn't resemble him.
I don't remember who it was that said it, but that's what he said.
Well, he certainly doesn't resemble him. I mean, people can talk about the guy only has 7 fights and whatnot, but he's already 33 years old. There's not going to be much progress there. He was hit a lot, so you got to give him that. His chin seems pretty good. His work rate was pretty good, but his punching power is not world class. His stamina is pretty. I was just wholly impressed all around. I mean, Stu Verne, I expected to lay down much sooner, but I think because Joyce wasn't that big of a puncher, and he was so easy. Yeah, and he was so easy to find that Stu Verne. I think Stu Verne actually thought that he had a chance in spots, and he was connecting with a number of hard punches. But it went on a bit longer than everyone expected, and again, he got the job done, but he's like John mentioned, this is some stupid eliminator fight. I think they get the I don't know what trinket they're fighting for, and honestly, I don't give a shit.
It was an eliminator for the WBA regular title belt.
Who is the WBA regular champion? I don't even know.
We got to wait until Frizzo Kendo
Manuel
I know. I just wanted you to say it.
Yeah, the first German heavyweight champion, Max Schmeling.
Manuel Chard and Frizzo Kendo might beat his ass.
Yeah, I would favor.
Wouldn't have been impossible.
No, I mean, when I watched this, John, you know what Bourbon Stu Verne reminded me of?
What did he remind me of?
Do you remember the TV show Give Me a Break with Nell Carter? He reminded me of Nell Carter.
I do remember that.
Yeah, he looked like Nell Carter.
Well, like Jeremiah pointed out, I thought the same thing. It was bizarre because he came in at 273 and he did way more than Joyce for this fight. So what
it looked like to me
weight advantage.
I don't think he thought he had a chance coming in, John. And then once he felt that Joyce didn't hit as hard as Deontay Wilder, he figured, what the hell? While I'm here, I'll try to win.
Yeah, it was bizarre the way, the one thing you have to kind of, so to speak, give Stu Verne is, because I think he's totally shot anyway, even despite the weight, is when he got inside the ropes of the bell rag, he actually came to fight.
Yeah.
And he wasn't prepared on the scales or anything. You figured he was shot, but then he decided, and it went longer than I expected.
No, wait, I still figure he's shot. I just figured Joe Joyce sucks. So.
Yeah, I think that Stu Verne's still shot, but like Jeremiah said, I mean, there was no doubt that Stu Verne was landing some bombs in the first round. It does maybe say a little bit for Joyce's chin, but there is also the possibility that Stu Verne was just so shot that even the power's not there anymore. I did find myself thinking, and this version of Stu Verne, I could have seen in this fight. If that was the Stu Verne of, say, 2014 that fought Areola the second time, he would have knocked Joyce out with those shots.
Oh, shit. You just moved this back 2 or 3 years and Stu Verne beats Joe Joyce.
Yeah, that was the part that was not that good for Joe Joyce. Even though I'm not totally down him, I still think he's a bottom half of the top 10 guy, as this goes on. But the limitations and the flaws are pretty evident.
So you agree that the heavyweight division sucks then? Because if you got him in the bottom half of the top 10, John, there's issues.
Not yet. I don't. I think that's where he ends up. No, I still think it's. Do
you think he beats Joseph Parker?
See, I just don't think that much. I don't think he beats.
I don't think
he beat David Price.
Joseph Parker. Yeah, well, he might beat David Price because Price will wear out in the fourth round and then get knocked into a coma.
He beats Price. I mean, I think I look at him like this is not necessarily even styles but levels to show what I'm talking about. Is because I do think that the division is getting a lot better overall, and I think we're going to look back at this as a good era. He reminds me. You go to like the late '90s and 2000s. What I'm talking about is he's kind of like a guy like a Lou Savarese or a Lance Whitaker
Lou
or Derek
Savarese would have fucked him up. Lou Savarese
I'm not
wasn't
saying
a bad
in terms
fighter.
of. No, I don't think Joyce is bad though.
I do. Jeremiah, do you think he's bad?
I don't think he's bad.
Jeremiah?
Do I think he's bad?
He sucks.
Well, I'm not going to go. I don't think he's bad, but he's
Bourbon Stu Verne, who was built like Nell Carter from Give Me a Break, took him 6 rounds deep and actually, cracked him a fair amount of times.
The only thing I care about at this point is Joe Joyce is not going to be a top player. You might as well just throw him against guys that are stylistically fun, like Konaki
and
Jarrell Miller.
And against Luis Ortiz?
No, but I agree with Jeremiah. He can make some good fights at the bottom part of the top 10, and it can be good fights. I think the same thing. He's not going to be, since now we have so much confusion, you just almost have to put it this way. It's sad, but he's not going to be the number one guy in the division. He's never going to be a threat to be the number one guy in the division.
No, and
there's no doubt about that.
I think Adam Konacki would walk right through him within 3 rounds.
I mean, these are kind of fights that you want to see, you'd like to see down the line. I mean, PBC's at least collecting some heavyweight guys. Some people were saying, which would be a tough stylistic match for him based on what you saw Saturday night, is, they got PBC as Andy Ruiz now. They got to have him fight somebody, but that might be
as slow as Joyce is, I think Andy Ruiz would have an easy one there. I think that's a stylistic nightmare.
Yeah, that's a bad style matchup for Joyce, so they might not want to do that yet. But like Jeremiah said, interesting fights. I mean, maybe Brazil has a step up fight next where he's fighting White or somebody else. If he loses, you could throw him in there with him. I mean, things like that. He's then competing to be in the bottom part of the top 10. Fun fights. So I see that type of thing too. He could be in a fun fight or two, but he's not a threat to be the number one guy in the division.
All right. If you're telling me he can compete to be in the bottom of the top 10, I'll agree with that. I just don't think he's ever going to get into the top 10. But we'll see. He's slow, and in the British, last time I saw he was British, and if you're naming Lennox Lewis, or Anthony Joshua, it usually doesn't work out that good for you. And we still don't know about Anthony Joshua. Next up, main event, Chris Eubank Jr. beats James DeGale in a unanimous 12-round decision. Jeremiah, do you think the decision was good? What do you think of the fight?
To be honest with you, I thought Eubank Jr. clearly won. I think 2 of the scorecards were a little too tight. For me, all DeGale was doing was flicking a jab, throwing a lead left hand from time to time. Yeah, and grabbing. He just wasn't effective. He wasn't effective in anything that he was doing, not even the clinching, as we see when Eubank Jr. tackled him. It's just – well, and when DeGale clinching him, Eubank Jr. was doing virtually all the.
You there, Jeremiah? All right, here we go. Jeremiah.
Work, DeGale would grab him.
All right, Jeremiah, we can't hear you.
And Eubank would just keep punching with his free hand. And to me, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
You kind of drop in and drop out. All right, let's go to John real quick. John, do you still have the same low opinion of Eubank?
Oh, yes, I do. I'm glad you opened it that way, Mike, because I think that needs to be clarified. I think some people are totally misreading this. And I think I can even go to my remarks pre-fight. I don't have anything I want to change or necessarily even really second guess. My analysis going in was I thought DeGale was shot. Some people say, well, people are saying now. No, I said it before the fight. But my opinion of Eubank on this level was so low that I had a tough time making the call, but I thought DeGale would maybe just have enough on his past experience and toughness that he could squeak out a decision. I do have to admit, I think Eubank won the fight, but I thought it was the same Eubank we've seen against Groves, Saunders, everybody else. I don't think he got any better. What happened was I thought maybe DeGale, if there's a capacity of a fighter where 100 is he's totally fresh and 0 is he's totally shot, I thought maybe DeGale out of 10 would be enough to squeak out a decision against Eubank, and I think DeGale was at about a 0, okay? He has nothing left. I mean, 0 left. He will not beat anybody if he continues that has a pulse, and I don't have any problem saying that. That's the way it'll go from here on out. He lost to Truax. He barely beat him in the rematch, and you and I both agree that I don't think it's even an excuse. just happened. You saw how DeGale was butting last night. He butted Truax early. Truax looked discombobulated by it. It was a close fight. DeGale got the decision. DeGale's got 0 left. And Eubank was swinging wild, missing, the tackling, the sloppiness. If there's 8 or 9 divisions, these guys don't breathe a top 10. And that's what it was competitive odds-wise going in. And some fans didn't make that point before the fight, and they had actually a pretty good point. You were kind of getting up for it just looking at the competitiveness based on the odds of it being you didn't know who was going to win, but that didn't necessarily mean it was going to be a good fight with what these two guys had, and it was not. It was a dreadful fight. I think Caleb Plant, makes Eubank look ridiculous. He'll make Caleb Plant look like Roy Jones if he were to fight him. And you can say that one because they're PBC. Eubank's going to have to be matched carefully. The one thing I'll give pro boxing matchmakers for the promoters, because they have money on the line and they need to be right with their properties, somebody behind the scenes knows that Eubank can't really fight on this level, and he will be matched accordingly, would be my prediction.
Yeah,
for as long as they
somebody will make a lot of money off of that too, with an easy fight.
Yeah, right. Right. I mean, I think that's the way that'll go, as long as they can get away with it. And DeGale, these guys can do what they want. It's their living, it's their livelihood. But from an outsider's perspective, health-wise, you got to look at it and say he should not fight again.
No, he's been done for a while. All right, I guess we got to look at the fights that are coming up this weekend. I know that there's some really great fights coming up this weekend. Did I sound like I believe that? Let's see. How about this? I'm sure John wants to start off with the DAZN card, which is headlined by Jordan Gill against Emmanuel Dominguez.
I was trying to forget that existed.
Oh, okay.
But no. Well, we've got what we've got is.
I was joking about it. I really have no interest in talking about it.
Yeah. Well, you got. There is one fight of note this weekend, I think, in terms of competitiveness and the abilities of the guys, which is, again, I wish these guys were just fighting as middleweights. Somebody wanted me to clarify that today on Twitter, and I do believe that still, but it's just that this is a good fight. These are guys that even 8 or 9 divisions would be in the top 10 or threatening, and that's Lara and Castano.
Yeah.
That is a good fight. That's an interesting fight. That's both guys who have some talent. So, and boxing needs it. We're going, I don't think it's pushing the alarm too much or an exaggeration after the type of stuff we saw last night and some of the stuff we've seen lately. It hasn't been a good year with the matchups. There's not all that much on the horizon. There is some stuff set for March, starting next week with Lara and Castano. The next week after that, you got Porter and Ugas. You got Spence and Garcia. This stuff's going to have to be good. Because, and I'm not saying it just because it's PBC, it's just PBC's got the mantle this month. In other words, it's going to be make or break on them, and somebody needed to do something. They've got the stuff on the schedule. We're going to have to see how it goes, because we need to see some good fights between some talented guys. And, that's what we've got in March.
So when we look at Castano and Lara, Jeremiah, how do you look at this one? Because Lara, he's been around for a while. Castano is new. Fought some decent competition over the last 2 or 3 fights. Does Castano have a shot here, or is this kind of more dependent on what Lara has left?
I think it's a little bit of both. I've seen Castano a few times. Got talent. I mean, he has a strong amateur pedigree, and he's fought, like you said, he's fought in some decent opposition in his career so far. So I think it's close. And again, partly is because of Lara's age. I mean, after the Hurd fight, he kind of got beat up in that fight. It wasn't terrible, but, he did take somewhat of a beating. And, it is kind of dependent on him, because I think he's the more gifted of the guys. Castano is not, he's not a big, heavy pressure fighter, so that may play to Lara's favor. But it's just, for me, it's kind of tough to predict. I really want to see what Lara has left, because he's getting up there in age as well. And Castano, he just seems like he's on the upswing. But I don't know. It's a close one. I mean, I'm going to favor Lara slightly by decision, but it's not clear cut to me. Again, I really need to see what Castano has when he steps up the steps up to the plate here.
All right, John, do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree with what Jeremiah is saying. Just in the outcome, Castano, he's got win over Michelle Soro, who's really underrated. I put a lot of stock in that, and close fight, but still, Soro's good, a very underrated fighter. He beat Derevyanchenko in the World Series of Boxing. Then some of the other guys in Argentina and stuff on his record aren't that good. I don't like to really make calls on guys unless I've seen them live fight. I don't mean in person, but when I don't know the outcome when I'm watching it, I just find it makes a lot of difference. So I don't feel like I've seen Castano enough live that I have a definitive call, but I do generally look at it like Jeremiah and like you said, Mike, I think with Lara, it's part, he's talented, but we got to look at what he's got left. I agree with Jeremiah. I think people might underrate that. He did take some shots against Hurd, and with a guy his age, he had the Angulo fight under his belt where he took a lot of punishment. Then he avoided it, but still, that's in his bank, so to speak. He could come in and not have as much. He is not a huge favorite, but he's a solid favorite. But Castano's, he's got that Soro win. He's got good size for the weight, and he's got some talent. So it would seem that this is a fight he's capable of winning if Lara has slipped a bit, and it won't have to be that he's got nothing left, but if he slipped a little bit, it might be enough for Castano to win. But Lara certainly, if he's got something left, has enough savvy and skill that he might be able to win it. So I don't really have a definitive call on how I think this one's going to turn out.
All right, next up on the undercard of that, we got Luis Ortiz against Christian Hammer. Christian Hammer lost to Alexander Povetkin, I think it was 2 years ago by decision. He beat Erkan Tepper by a split decision. Of course, lost to Tyson Fury. I think John, the more this division gets split up because of three separate promoters for three different fighters, Luis Ortiz is eventually going to get a shot at the title again.
Yeah, that's exactly the way I view this. I view this fight, Mike. I've never seen it, but there have been, some European, writers and fans that know what they're talking about that have put some stock in Hammer at times over the years. I've never seen it, but I guess you can say that. But for me, I haven't. I just don't think he's going to be competitive with Ortiz. But I agree with you, where this fight, even though it's Hammer, I think it does have new meaning, because if you look at this heavyweight landscape, it's very unfortunate the way it's developing, but it is a fact. And, if you're going to still be watching boxing, which we are, you got to deal with it. All of a sudden, one of the biggest fights out there, maybe even for this, I would say for this year, before the year ends, would be a rematch of Wilder and Ortiz, because if it's all fracturing off and Joshua and Hearn are taking him in one direction, and now Fury, co-promoted by Adams, going in another direction, and it looks like the Fury direction there is going to be fighting really weak opposition. I mean, that's what they have available and what they're talking, that's on the horizon. So, Wilder in the U.S., his first fight with Ortiz was exciting. It had drama. It was in Brooklyn at Barclays, had a good crowd that was excited, good ratings on Showtime. Ortiz has looked like he's had something left since in his fights. And so, it seems that this is a chance for him now Saturday night. If he looks good again, that is a fight, especially in the U.S., that can be sold and might do better than people think.
All right, Jeremiah.
Yeah, it's not that bad. I mean, compared to what Ortiz has been fighting lately, I think Hammer is a clear step up.
Better than Travis Coffin.
Yeah. I think Hammer is. I think he's about a fringe level guy. I didn't see his fight with Tepper because I'm not into seeing who's the best heavyweight in Germany. But Tepper was. He's got some ability. I mean, I think he was the second guy to knock David Preisser out. I mean, he's not a bad fighter, but no, this is a step up, and I think he's serviceable too. Wherein he's got some durability. So I mean, I favor Ortiz to win this fight, of course. But the only thing I would caution on, of course, is these are heavyweights, and you never know with Ortiz being 52 years old. You never know really when he's going to hit the wall. And again, that's my only concern. I mean, Ortiz has looked good in his last few outings. It's just again, you never really know with this, but I think it probably. I don't know. I'm going to call a decision win here. I think Hammer takes him the distance, but knockout wouldn't surprise me.
All right. I guess we'll go to boxing news now, which is all exciting, too. Eddie Hearn wants Jaime Munguia to fight Jesse Vargas, Jeremiah.
Eddie Hearn wants... okay, so, well, I have been hearing quite a bit about this Jesse Vargas moving up lately, but it's largely been in the context of Kell Brook fighting him, so I'm not sure exactly what's...
Actually, this is an article that was put out today by Dan Ambrose, who says that Hearns is
I
looking...
haven't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know I've been seeing the same. It is unfortunate, Jeremiah. It's unfortunate news, but there are credible reports coming out now that it's apparently shifted. That now Vargas is going to campaign at 154 pounds. Why nobody asked for it, and he can't punch at 147 or 140.
Reportedly is ready to go ahead and put Vargas in their top 15 too at 154. So.
They can just make him the number one contender. That's never a problem for them. So,
no.
So with Munguia, it's a no-risk fight because Vargas is not a puncher, and Munguia's got good size. Jesse Vargas has shown a good chin in his career, but standing there with Munguia for 12 rounds when you have a pop gun and he's got a cannon is a different story, and that's a no-risk fight for Munguia. That's not going to end well for Vargas. So that's the kind of stuff we're getting that we just have no need for, and it's just got to stop with all platforms and promoters. A lot of the way this year is shaping up is not good. I think, like I said, March, it just happens to be that PBC's got a lot of stuff scheduled that has some potential. We don't know which way it's going to go yet, but I think it needs to go good because we got to get some decent fights with some talented guys that are out there and getting some exposure, or it's just going to keep getting uglier and uglier.
Yeah, my question is, Jeremiah, I think it's obvious that they're protecting him until they can get him in the ring against Canelo. Do you think that's true? And if you do, does that mean that they're not convinced Munguia is that good, but they want to make sure they can cash out on him if nothing else?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because, just because they're both Mexican. I mean, and Munguia is a come-forward fighter. He's got an exciting style. I mean, it's just a big sell. So I think exactly that's what they're trying to do. I mean, and it makes some sense because to me, Munguia he's not a guy who's going to run a division. He's big at 154 and he's got some skill, and I know a lot of people are waiting for him to progress and tighten up his defense a little bit and, just kind of mold and shape his style a little bit better. But I just don't think that's going to work for him if he tries to be too defensive minded. He just seems like one of those guys who's just better at just reacting as opposed to, like observing things, analyzing. He just doesn't seem like that kind of guy. He just seems like one of those guys, you just got to wind him up and let him go. And that's what you're going to get. I mean, I think he's always going to have big defensive flaws, because guys like that typically don't evolve their defenses that much. And so, I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, maybe we'll get somebody in the bottom top 10, so long as they're easy enough pickings, they're not big punchers. But I do think eventually that's where they're going to go. And it makes financial sense. I wouldn't be too angry about it, but it would be nice, seeing as Jaime Munguia is apparently a world title holder, if you would actually fight somebody worth a damn, because this is the kind of crap we get in boxing far too much. I mean, this guy is a titleist and he's still being babied. It just, when did we get to that point? I don't like that a bit. And if they're just going to milk these defenses, of course they'll let him too, because they see the ultimate cash out in the end. It's unfortunate. I would just like to see him step up and learn a little bit more before he ever gets like that. But I'm not sure we will.
All right. Let's wrap this up with this, because I think this encompasses everything that's wrong, is the Tyson Fury situation with Top Rank, DAZN, PBC, all this crap. John, what's your take? Because to me now it looks like we're going to probably have 2 years of these guys fighting everybody but each other.
I think it's really bad. With all of them, I do think it's really bad. I don't think it's being overly panicky or dramatic. Or then people say, well, boxing's always survived. Yeah, boxing survived, but it's continued to decline overall. And there's been some money spent lately, but that doesn't mean the overall trend is not still declining. And I think that all will add to a declining trend. You had a surprisingly good fight with Wilder and Fury. They both took a chance. It paid off. And then what do we get now? Instead of boxing benefiting from that, which you think it almost would have had to, they were going to have a rematch, and then Joshua was going to fight Miller since he couldn't fight either of those two guys, which then made some sense if then that would be the next fight down the line. And instead, you've got these basically, looks like we're going to have three fractured entities, and, they're going to be fighting, especially the Fury way that one's being set up. Out of the three, with the fight easy opponents. And, you can't ask boxing fans to keep paying for this stuff, even keep taking out their weekend evenings and late afternoons to watch these fights and cards that are just not competitive. It's not going to work. You can look at the TV ratings and on a lot of these fights, they're not that good. And, you look at them compared to the UFC, whatever you think of the UFC, if you keep getting out distance in the ratings, that's a potential problem. So you gotta be better fights and gotta be soon.
Yeah, but the UFC, John, the advantage they have is they own all the fighters.
Right, and that's the thing. It's not as good for fighters getting paid, but they tell them who to fight, and they get good matchups, and the fans do respond, and there's less weight classes, so. These people that try to defend some of this crazy stuff in boxing, it's idiotic because you can see the results when you have more competitive matchups, less weight classes, not a million belts, and the fans respond. You look at the UFC cards, and in the prelims, a lot of the odds on those fights are close. I mean, just in their preliminary fights.
Yeah,
and in boxing, you don't even get close in the main event. It's not even close.
Plus 1,400 is a close fight.
Right, and that's the problem with boxing right now. I mean, we're getting fed that stuff regularly.
And I think John was onto something because he mentioned this, I think, last week when he was talking about how close the odds were for the UFC cards. And Mike, you're onto something too, and fans really need to understand this because some of these guys take it as a rivalry, They're like, oh, we'll forget the MMA. It's a bunch of it's guys, and wrestling and doing stuff on the ground. Say what you will of it. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Mike.
Okay.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Jeremiah?
Mike.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah?
There must be a delay.
Must be. Just keep talking.
Yeah, but no, what I was going to say is the only thing that boxing fans really have on the UFC is the paydays, because boxing is more of a laissez-faire approach and there's a lot more freedom, there's no governing body, so people aren't skimming stuff off the top. But we're always going to lose out to places that have a unified vision and a unified marketing department. I mean, the UFC doesn't really have to worry about that much competition. Boxing is so fractured, and we're so worried about, you have these people picking sides. Oh, well, I'm team PBC or DAZN or ESPN. It's all just a bunch of nonsense. We're always going to keep shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't have a unified vision. And, okay, yeah, fighters make more, but would you rather see that trade-off so we can actually see the fight the best, so we can have undercards that are close as well. The thing with the UFC is that, again, yeah, these guys don't quite get paid as much, but the culture surrounding this sport is a lot different than you don't care if you lose that much. I mean, they had a welterweight champion not long ago who had something like a borderline of heard of anymore.
Yeah, and I think when we look at this, John, of course, it's bad for boxing, but Venus Martirosyan was on, and what he told me and Jeremiah was this: the fighters just towed a company line. Nobody wants to rock the boat. They want to keep getting paid for just fighting twice a year, and nobody will demand anything.
Yeah, they're trying to. They take a lot of risk, and they're trying to get paid while they're there. And I think what's a problem with the boxing mentality in general is it's almost like people who are playing a lottery ticket. The fighters and the promoters, everybody's vision is that they're going to be in a Mayweather-Pacquiao fight because, that the numbers were astronomical. That's just such a rare thing when you take the sport on the whole, and only two guys were able to get it. You can't steer your career like you're going to, it's all going to be about somehow you're going to end up in a Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. And the promotions are doing it too. And that's why, like, every fight on TV is supposedly like a showcase fight where a guy's a minus 1,400 favorite, and that's supposed to lead him to some sort of a Mayweather-Pacquiao type thing 5 years down the road, and it ain't happening because you're not building enough interest along the way. People aren't seeing the guys in good fights, and they don't, and it makes the majority of people just not care.
Well, and I think people forget this. If Mayweather and Pacquiao fight in 2010, by 2015, they could have been on their third or fourth fight, making even more money.
Yeah, that could have even worked out better, as big as it was. It's not wrong or an exaggeration to say it couldn't have worked out better. I mean, boxing even delayed that too long, and sure, they could have fought earlier and then had a rematch or even two more fights or something, made even more. But people look at that number and think, well, they're going to hit that jackpot, and if it even comes, it'll be for one or two, two guys and one promotion, and the other promotions aren't going to get it, or maybe two promotions, and it's just so rare that it just doesn't seem to be a strategy that your whole promotional company or all your fighters are being steered in that type of a direction, because that's the rare exception. You could be having more big fights that have good paydays and made good money, rather than just wait for that sort of holy grail that you're going to get, once every 5 years or 10 years or something like that. I mean, you didn't really have a fight with that kind of money generation. You have to go back to like Tyson and Lewis or something like that before that. So it's not something that's happening every day.
Yeah. The only thing that really upsets me is the guy that's going to get hurt the most in all this is probably Manuel Chara.
Yeah, for the next time he fights. If he's going to get back in the ring.
He has no chance, because they're not going to let him fight it in a big three to prove that he's actually the greatest German, even considering Max Schmeling. But, all right, guys, we're going to wrap the show up because Jeremiah is having internet issues, which is driving us all crazy, and I'm sure it's probably driving you all crazy also. We would like to apologize for Jeremiah's internet. Jeremiah is going to give it a stern talking to. John, anything to say before we wrap it up?
No, actually, it's good that I think we got it covered for the optimists out there, like, I'm just going to wrap again. I like how PBC is trying to get more exposure, but it's not a PBC team thing. It's just wanting boxing to get exposure and good fights. March, they're the ones that have them. You like them or not, it's going to need to be something good. If this goes bad, you can knock PBC all you want and things, and maybe there'll be some reasons for it, but there's not going to be much else out there, because if you're a DAZN fan, you got Canelo and Jacobs and Miller and Joshua. That's in May and June. We're here in February.
Yeah.
But it's not enough. It's just not enough. So
no.
We need something to happen.
All right, Jeremiah, you there?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Say something quick before it cuts out.
No, I don't really. I'm not gonna. I'm fear it's gonna cut out, so I'm not gonna go on anything right now. I think we all had it covered at the end there.
Yep. And we will be back tomorrow night with Inside Boxing Daily. Christopher Shelton will be our guest, boxing historian. He wants to talk a little De La Hoya against Camacho. So we'll have that. We'll have your boxing news before that. And every night, Monday through Friday, we will be on at 11 o'clock Eastern. So we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up. I want to remind everybody, go to iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, anywhere you can rate us. Leave comments, give us some feedback. We appreciate that. You can follow us at TGTN Boxing on Twitter or at Grueling Truth. Check out our Facebook page, The Grueling Truth. And make sure you check out our sponsors, the Sheridan Report and the Retired Boxers Foundation. So, you can hear all of our shows on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for Jeremiah Preisser, John Einrein, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.